What's up, everybody? So today we're going to be doing a trade recap from the trade that I took on Monday, June 13th. I shorted Tesla for the downside opening range break, and I made $1,675 in just 1 minute. So now let's get into the newsletter watch list. What was I watching? I was watching Tesla, my favorite stock to trade, Nvidia, Meta, Microsoft, and Apple. And what you see here, this is my newsletter watch list. This is everything that I'm posting on my private Twitter 30 minutes before market open. I do a quick analysis of the overall market, the SPY and the Qs, all the stocks that I think are worth watching that day, if there's any major market news, if there's any news tied to each stock, and all the levels that I think are going to be in play. And then to the left, this is exactly what I'm posting on my private Twitter. It's that newsletter. I take a screenshot of the charts, green line to the upside being long, red line to the downside being short, and then I make sure to highlight those two major levels above. If you're interested in getting access to this, there's going to be a link in the description below. So now let's go over the technicals because that's very important. That's how I'm coming up with what I think could possibly happen. Obviously, nobody knows what's going to happen, but just using my experience to say that these things could maybe play out. So as far as the SPY goes, let's start with that to the left. This is the daily chart. This is what it looked like coming into the 13th. So I said that it's another weekday on Friday and now getting more downside follow through this morning. Could be volatile today, so keeping it simple. Watching pre-market high to the upside, clears that and has room to 388, 390, breaks pre-market low and stays below, the pullback can continue, has room to 375, 370. So now let's really break down the daily chart of the SPY. So we have been in a downtrend. It had a dead cat bounce, consolidated sideways for a couple weeks, and then broke the low of that consolidation. So downtrend continued. It broke it on this day right here. It got back below the 9 EMA and the 20 SMA, had a big gap down the next day, and then was showing even more weakness today. So even though it was a little overextended to the downside, just realizing that the path of least resistance, at least for right now, is going to be lower. And now let's go over the Qs. So I said that it's another weekday on Friday as well, and it's getting more downside weakness this morning. Bulls hold up off the open, then starts to trend higher and clears pre-market high. It could bounce to 288, 290, breaks pre-market low and stays below. Bears can take control for more downside follow through. Has room to 273, 268. So now let's quickly go over the daily chart. So same concept. In a downtrend, had the dead cat bounce, sideways consolidation for a couple weeks, broke the low of that consolidation, stopped people out, or now new longs are stuck. Got some follow through the next day, and then coming in today, there was even more weakness. It was a little oversold, but just realizing the path of least resistance is going to be down. And now to go over Tesla because I traded this. So I said that it's a weekday the prior day, back below the 9 EMA and the 20 SMA, closed below 690, which is prior support on the daily. Can bounce if it holds up off the open, then starts to trend higher and clears pre-market high. Has room to 705, 715, breaks pre-market low and stays below. Bears can take control from more downside to 650, 635. So now to quickly go over the daily chart, what's happened recently. Had a couple green days in a row, but then this next candle, that's a pretty nasty reversal candle. Got back below the 9 EMA and the 20 SMA, showed some weakness the day after, closed below this prior pivot low. So just realizing that sellers are currently in control in a weak market, was getting some more follow through to the downside today. Like I've said before, the path of least resistance was lower and I just did not want to fight that. So now let's go over what happened with Tesla on the intraday. So as far as the 2-minute chart, that's my favorite time frame to trade. Had a push off the open, very quickly set the high right around 680. And then had a little bit of consolidation, but eventually got back below the VWAP and the 9 EMA, had the low of day right around 667. And when it broke the low of day with a technical level below, pre-market low, if anybody was long from 668 and higher, they're going to be underwater. I would think if it makes a new low of day, I would want to stop out of my position, kind of trigger stops, and then maybe it gets to that pre-market low and then has some follow through. So I ended up taking it just before the new low of day, got a nice move lower, and like always, took quick profits. So now to get into the actual trade so you can see the price action live. So I had that push higher, very quickly showing weakness, back below the VWAP and the 9 EMA, anticipating the downside opening range break, that new low of day with pre-market low below. I ended up going short. I took the 665 puts, 5 of them, and I got filled at $28. Ended up making a new low a day, got really nice follow through. That's a big move in my favor, so I'm always just going to take those profits. I ended up selling the full position, all 5 contracts at $31.35 for a nice gain. So now let's check out the P&L after that trade. Ended up making $1,675 in 1 minute, which is an awesome green day. That was the trade recap. I appreciate you watching the video. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. I just want to talk about a couple cool things that I have to offer. The first is going to be my newsletter watch list. This is exactly what I post on my private Twitter 30 minutes before market open every single day. I do a quick analysis of the overall market, the SPY and the Qs, if there's any major market news that day, and then all the stocks I'm interested in watching, it's usually 4 or 5, if there's any major news tied to them, and all the levels that I think are in play. To the left, this is exactly what I'm posting on my private Twitter. I make sure to add that newsletter. I take a screenshot of the charts, green line to the upside being long, red line to the downside being short, and I make sure to highlight those 2 levels above. This is everything that's going on in my mind and my game plan going into each market open. Also, I make sure to add a little mental note because every day is slightly different, and here's an example of that. And if you want something that's a little bit less of a commitment, I do offer a live one-on-one call for 1 hour. This is where you can ask me questions about my journey, go over setups specifically, everything that I've gone through as a trader. Whether you're beginner or advanced, this is a great way to connect with me. So if you're interested in my private Twitter or the one-on-one live call, feel free to go to callmattdiamond.com or check out the links in the description below.